Guys, this is Butch Hiles and Gary Hashman for the rest round. We're here with Jason Campbell and Mike Stump of Parkersburg BJJ. And we're going to talk about self-defense jiu-jitsu, not really versus any other kind of jiu-jitsu, because you can argue that self-defense jiu-jitsu is the original jiu-jitsu. And it's actually not much of an argument because that's what Gracie says, right? But I think people forgot in a way, because sport jiu-jitsu, meaning, competing is changed and things are changed around a little bit, but we'll kind of get into the meat of it and see what direction we head. But guys, first of all, tell us about your gym, about you guys, and then we'll just see where everything heads us and go that direction.
Yeah. So we own Parkersburg Jiu-Jitsu Academy, located in the Parkersburg, Vienna area. We're part of the Pedro Sauer Association, and we've been with them since this academy opened in 2016. We do women's classes, adult classes, kids classes. We also offer Bikini Turkish Tactical Association, Kali, and yoga at our facility. So we've just it's post-COVID, the academy's exploded. Membership is just through the roof. So we're really just blessed to be part of that. We originally both started training actually with you, Butch, when you were part of Hoist Gracie's association. We got our blue belts through Hoist. And so this is 20 years of association friendship with you guys. And so we're just blessed to be in the jiu-jitsu game still after 20 plus years.
Yeah, it's crazy, huh? I mean, that's a long time. People don't really think, and that's what we're talking about before we started live on here, is that it's weird to think of that. And we've seen the evolution of jiu-jitsu, really, meaning that we've seen all the hot stuff, meaning rubber guard and, leg locks now, and half guard was just coming about, and just blah, blah, blah. De La Hiva, obviously, we guys were all doing that. And then, of course, really, I would also say amongst that time, that's when self-defense started coming back into play, because Elio, and that was in 2004 is when I trained with Elio and Hoist and Horion and the grandsons, or whatever, Henner and Huron and all them. But that's when they were starting to bring back what jiu-jitsu was originally made for, which is self-defense, right? And I'll tell you what, and that's when I was with those guys, but they, that's when they were like, we want white gis, we want the traditional stuff, want this, and do that. I'm an anti-traditional guy, always have been, right? So I was like, white gi, I really like this blue Krugen's gi that I have, like it had nothing to do with
There's a blast from the past.
Yes, exactly.
Krugen's.
Yeah. And that was, that was the thing. And so I was like, well, I got to change my gi, but it took a while. I mean, obviously, and speaking of what we were talking about earlier, when we trained all these people, I mean, you guys had Rodrigo in, or we had Rodrigo in, right, in Parkersburg.
Yeah.
A reason I bring that up, because I pretty much remember him having a blue gi on. He might not have. He might have had a white one. I might just be making that up. But I was like, well, this guy, I'd like to train with him instead. But, it's just funny. Like I said, that started coming back. Then I think I went more sports jiu-jitsu route, meaning that we had guys competing, but we were also doing MMA and some, that's really where we broke off. Is like I had the dream of that time of putting people in the UFC or doing something else, and you can't really have quote unquote normal people there when you're having fighters there, right?
Right.
And we tried it, and I've done it, and I continue to somewhat do it. And I'll tell you what, it's one of the things I talk about all the time. It just doesn't go well, because a fighter's there to get ready for a fight, right? He's got to go hard. So if a 6-year-old man walks in there and a 6-year-old man says, well, I don't care to go hard, well, there's a different level of hard, right? And this 6-year-old man may have a job, may not have a job, but most people don't want to wake up the next day and feel like they can't walk across the room, right? And the other guy's 18, so he's not going to feel like that. It's just, it's kind of a recipe for disaster in a weird way, right? It's hard to do. So yeah. What do you guys think about that? I mean, is that kind of more of your philosophy, is, hey, we take that element out? Doesn't mean that you can't fight, because that's what self-defense is. It's a fighting art and how to defend yourself. But there's a difference between MMA, which is a sport, and that's a different fight, right?
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think with our approach to it is the way we have people do it. It's scalable for them, do what they're willing to do, or how much they can do, not force them into, like an MMA type of setting,
Yeah.
just let them pick their own scale and range that they're willing to and comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the times, once they start getting into the jiu-jitsu, they end up going way out of the comfort zone into stuff that they never thought they would do. So,
Well, that's true. Now you guys, since before we started, you guys have, what's the youngest person you have, or that you accept? Maybe not that you have, like 4-year-olds or younger.
Yeah, so we run a 6-year-old class, our little Cobras class. We had so many parents coming to us because we have a really large kids program. We're at around 100 kids in our kids program. And so we had some parents coming to us saying, their little brothers, little sisters want something to do. So we started up the 4 to 6-year-old program as a feeder for our kids program. And this week we actually, our first kids that have moved up into the regular kids program got their first stripes on their belts. So we have 4 to 6, then a 7 to 11 age group, and then 12 and up is in the adults classes, because our teen curriculum and our adult curriculum are pretty much the same. So
now, how do you split everything up? As I guess you have, like you said, you call it little Cobras. Is that what do you call it?
Yeah.
And what age group is that?
4 to 6.
4 to 6, and then what's the next?
7 to 11 is our kids program, regular kids program, and then 12 and up is our teen adult program.
Okay, well, that's awesome, man. Gary, I feel like I've been hogging everything, so I see you staring at me up there.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, like, you were talking about, an older guy coming into class and guys who are wanting to compete, fight. Part of that, I think, with an older guy coming into class, there's only one Butch Hiles of Butch Hiles Jiu-Jitsu, and if you've got 3 guys who are trying to get ready for a competition or a fight, those 3 guys want your attention because they're trying to get ready for a fight. And the old guy comes in and he wants your attention because he paid good money to be there. And so it's hard to have those things coincide. The guys who are fighters are going to be, they're going to feel let down if they don't get your attention to get them ready for a fight. A guy who is there to just learn some self-defense is going to feel like he was losing something by not getting, the instructor, the owner's attention. So I can see how that's hard to balance. When I started off at Hoist Gracie in Athens, and so my game, like, it was all Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. Everything that I do is still pretty much, there's some stuff that I've picked up outside of being an RGA guy, that is a little more sport. But for the most part, my style is still pretty much guard player. And if I'm not in guard, it's pressure passing, which is it's nothing spectacular. There's no barambolos, there's no inversions or anything like that. It's a pretty simple game, and it's a pretty safe game. And I was kind of forced to do that because my first partner was this giant 270-pound guy, but like the good looking 270, not my kind of 270. So he had like abs and pecs and the Bane mask. And so that was my first partner. So I had to have Gracie Jiu-Jitsu when I started. And eventually you can't always be the hammer. You're the nail sometimes. Sometimes the goal of the nail is to just, like, you have to outlast the hammer. You don't have to beat the hammer, you have to outlast the hammer. And that was kind of my jiu-jitsu. And I think that's kind of, for me, whenever I think of self-defense jiu-jitsu, that's kind of the way it has to be sometimes, because you run into a force that you can't resist, and accepting it's kind of the only way. I don't know. Is that a good analogy for you guys?
Yeah. And I think the one thing about as we get older, I'm in my mid 40s now, and a lot of the super flexible guards and things like that, I'm always safe with my old school Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. I can always go back to a solid closed guard game. I can always, fall back on good mount controls, good side controls, things like that. And those fundamentals of what we've trained and learned over the years, it allows me to still get in there and roll with guys. And those fundamentals, if you have them hammered down, which in all my years of doing this, I still work every day on, every day I learn something new about the fundamentals, and there's details that you pick up, and especially training with Master Sauer and with his association. Every time we train with them, it's another little nugget of information that makes that position this much more efficient, and just trying to develop that efficient jiu-jitsu. Now we have guys that love to delve off. They get good at the fundamentals and then they branch off into whatever they want to go into. And it's great. But I find that as I get older, it's a lot easier to get tweaked. You get an injury here. I joke that we're in a constant state of minor injury, and it's always an ankle, a knee, a shoulder, an elbow. There's always something there. But I kind of find for me that old school jiu-jitsu is just so efficient to fall back on, that, if I could lock a guy down in closed guard, get him down in kind of stage one, and hold him there, I can start wearing people down. And we're cops. So we use this every day. Okay. Every time we go hands-on with somebody, we are using jiu-jitsu. And between the Lord and Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, we've stayed safe through this, through a long career in law enforcement. And so we know it works. There's not a doubt in our mind about it.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that's one of the things I wanted to bring up, is that since you guys are in law enforcement, it's a little bit different than, first of all, the way that you could practice jiu-jitsu, like we just mentioned earlier, is if you're a fighter, you get to go out and test it. And if you do sport jiu-jitsu, you get to go to a tournament and test it out. But there's a difference because a lot of times when, like, for example, when I teach stuff, I'll say, hey, and then, for example, in Gracie self-defense, just for example, like somebody could grab you, one of the moves, they grab you by the throat and you kind of just duck your head out, right? So to us, like guys that do Muay Thai or fighting, people are like, oh, that's BS. I would never do that because you'll get kneed in the face, right? Or whatever they say. And I said, well, you may not, but you got to remember, we're talking about people that don't know how to fight that happen to attack you, right? And especially for women, this is not exactly for everybody, even though you've got, and that's why I'm saying this, you guys got real life application. You've done all this stuff. And I remember having some talks with you, Mike, a long time ago, where I think you hip tossed a couple guys in at the jail or, that attacked you, but it was muscle memory. Like they ran at you, all of a sudden you hip toss them and land on the top. I'm pretty sure I'm remembering this conversation from 20 years ago, but
yeah.
So that lead us down that. How do you think in real life competition, real life things that you see in law enforcement, how has this helped you? What moves have came out specifically that you've seen in Gracie Jiu-Jitsu or Jiu-Jitsu in general that you just use because you know it and you didn't even think about it?
Yeah. A lot of the self-defense stuff, we apply it. The biggest thing I think is an understanding of leverage. It helps you be able to control someone. Having trained with so many people of so many different sizes, I have an idea going into a situation of what I'm capable of doing against someone of a certain size. That's an important one. Being able to control someone without having to resort to beating them with a club or punching and kicking and things like that has been a real blessing. Me and Jason were partners for the last couple of years, and the ability for the two of us to go hands-on with someone, control them without them having to make a trip to the hospital, it's a huge advantage. But one of the biggest things is we are constantly testing ourselves against a resistant opponent, and that confidence that jiu-jitsu gives you to be able to go in and deal with someone. Honestly, we have more training than anybody else on our department, and really probably very many people on this side of, the Ohio side of our county and law enforcement. And we probably get in less physical confrontations than anybody.
Yeah, well, I'm hesitant to say this. Sorry for cutting you off, Gary, but I'm hesitant to even go down this rabbit hole, but I kind of want to. So with all the controversy going on, so that's the part, like, I don't want to have you guys or me or anybody say anything that somebody doesn't agree with, for example, but that all being said, with the problems that people are having with police and stuff right now, obviously you guys are fully aware of, there's, it's craziness, but with what do you think, I guess, with having training, jujitsu training? So obviously that's going around where some people are like, I think everybody that does law enforcement should be a blue belt or purple belt. They should be this, they should be that. I think we agree. We also know that that takes a long time, right? So some of it's a little unrealistic, right? Because at what point do you do this? After you get hired, before you get hired? Because and then how do you hold people accountable for, there's a lot of things that nobody's talking about. Like it sounds good on paper, right? And it is right. Meaning that you guys can do things. I think sometimes the fear is what happens to people, right? I'm not a law enforcement officer, but my theory would be if you don't have anything to fall back on and fear hits you, that's when you're going to grab your gun or you're going to do something that's a little, not good. Is that what you agree? Because if I have the confidence that, hey, like if this guy puts his hands on me, I'm going to take care of it, or I can control him. I'm not even thinking about a weapon because I don't. For example, even though I'm not law enforcement, I have the option to carry a gun or not to carry a gun. And people always ask me, do you conceal carry? And then they act like I'm against it because I don't. I'm like, no, like that wants to be my last thing. And in my mind, I don't have to have a gun. So I don't want to put myself in a situation where, say, potentially somebody kicked my ass. I got mad. I went back and got my gun. I shot him. It is a potential. I don't know. I might, who knows how bad my temper would be in that situation. But I feel like I have the skills enough to control somebody, and I should. And it doesn't mean that I think I'm a badass and I can do that. Like I've been training for 20 years. I hope that I can. Now, if I can't, that guy probably wrestled or did some jujitsu or boxing, man, like whatever. But you guys are in the same situation. Is that how you feel? You just mentioned that you don't have to grab these weapons, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of the times the guys that aren't confident in their ability to control somebody or go hands on, they rely on the weapon, especially the taser. I couldn't tell you how many times when he and I were working together, the taser was very ineffective. Either A, it didn't work at all when it probed him, or he shot one. I was chasing a guy one day and he tried to shoot the taser and literally the wires just come out with no probes on it at all.
Really?
So,
What's that great?
A
little rough.
Pull back to a mechanical device that's made by a human that could possibly fail. So
yeah.
And we're encountering a lot of people entering law enforcement now, these younger guys who have never been in a physical confrontation in their life. It's a culture. There's a different culture today than, for a lot of people than what there used to be. When we were growing up, if things went south, you knuckled up and, you get in a few fights growing up and stuff like that. So it's not a foreign concept to you. Played contact sports, things like that. There's a lot of people out there today that have no frame of reference for any kind of physical confrontation. And also we're finding that a lot of people, their communication skills, they're used to texting on a phone, but to have a face-to-face conversation and to be able to confront someone and deal with aggression, kind of with the verbal judo, to be able to de-escalate a situation and stuff like that. They have a hard time with it. And then if you don't have confidence in your ability to protect yourself, that makes de-escalation even harder. When panic sets in, that's when you start, making mistakes because you're operating out of that frame of reference of panic and not out of confidence or preparation for those kind of incidences. We have gotten heavy into training cops because I'm a DT instructor. Jason's a scenario instructor. So we're training a lot of cops. We put on free trainings quarterly and stuff like that. But, getting cops to train in any kind of martial art, jiu-jitsu, anything like that, getting cops to shoot. Sometimes that's the hardest two things to get them involved in. And it's the two things that, are really the most important at the end of the day. You can stumble through paperwork. You can stumble through writing a traffic ticket and stuff like that. But when someone is wanting to do violence on you, and there's a difference between fighting and violence. You get a guy that resists arrest and you go hands on and you take him down the ground, you put his arm behind his back, you put the cuffs on. That's a little bit of a fight. There's people out there that are actively murdering law enforcement officers, and that's violence. And there's a very distinct difference between a fight and violence. And so we're really trying to provide that level of training to our law enforcement around here to where they have access to the tools they need. But as far as getting, there's a big push to get every cop to a blue belt in BJJ. I heard somebody say the other day, and I can't remember who said it, but they said BJJ is for everybody. You know, Gracie Jiu-Jitsu is for everybody, but not everybody's for Jiu-Jitsu. And it takes a measure of dedication, of time, and putting in the effort to get the results you need out of it.
Takes being humble too, right? Not every,
Yeah.
and that's what I think that statement means. Not everybody can go in and get their butt beat, right?
Yeah.
And then have to realize in their mind they're not as tough as they thought, or they're going to have to hang out with you guys that just kick their ass, and they maybe wanted you to think that they're really tough, right? Like it's the male ego, right? We all have it. I mean, it's how you manage it, because I think all of us think in your mind, even the nicest people, like you have these dreams, you just knock somebody out and you just think you're tougher than you are, and then reality sets in. And you know, that's what I teach when I have women's self-defense class, because that same thing I say, I know what you think. You've seen a ton of videos, you're going to kick somebody in the balls and they're going to fall down, and then I used to say, I'm here to tell you that we're fighters. We punch each other in the face and smile and hit the other guy back. So like your punch, it's like, no offense, but you're a small lady, it's probably not going to hurt. So you need to get that out of your head first. It doesn't mean you're not going to strike, but your main thing is the principles of Gracie Jiu-Jitsu is use leverage, get away, live to fight another day. It's not to more like Krav Maga where you're gouging the eyes out and doing that. And again, there is a place for that. We do that to a degree, but I always preface it that first of all, you got to get away. The Krav tactics in my mind are more, if you can't get away, if you get somebody got you in a car and they're going to do this now, like you're fighting for your life, it's a different story. You're going to do what you can do. But normally if somebody's attacking you, first of all, you got to remember normal people don't usually attack people. So they're crazy, they're on drugs, there's something wrong with this person. So they're going to have that kind of superhuman, especially to a young lady, they're going to be a little bit harder to handle. Right. And so that's the thing. I like to mix them up when I show, but really a lot of my self-defense seminars are like the first half hour is just like getting people in the right mindset, like dispelling all the myths. You know, I'd almost, and I'm not going to do it, but I wish I was like Jackass. I'd just be like, here, come kick me in the balls. Let's get this out of your head. But, you know, that's not going to happen either.
Well, and you know, one of the biggest things that we stress, and every time we talk to cops, we talk to self-defense seminars, women's programs, is situational awareness. You know, if you get off of your cell phone when you're walking through a parking lot and your eyes are up and you're looking around, paying attention to what's going on, you can avoid 90% of the problems out there. Because if you're looking out at a distance and taking in everything, a lot of it can be avoided. And, you know, that's one of the big things we stress. But we also, you know, we have gone and trained with Tim Kennedy, done sheepdog response. We've gone and trained with Matt Larson. We train with the Pakiti Tersha guys, Jared Wahongi, Ernie Lake. We just had Ernie up last Saturday doing edge weapon countermeasures. So we're not just locked into jiu-jitsu. We cross-train a lot of stuff to bring those skills and to bring our skill level up so that the information that we're sharing is real-world applicable to what these people need. And so I feel like, you know, our philosophy is to try to be more well-rounded. Jason, after our jiu-jitsu gym closed down, he got into Krav Maga, and so he brings that background to the training and stuff. And there's a lot to it there that it all meshes with jiu-jitsu, and in our jiu-jitsu, the cross-pollination between all of it, it's really a beautiful thing if you can put it all together.
Yeah. And
I was gonna say, Mike, you had said something a little bit ago that kind of like hit me, and I've always known it was important, but I don't think I realized how important until you said it, and now I know why. Is training with different size competitors and how that preps you for the real world, because we are so, and this is one of the things that's always bothered me about not that having a women's class is bad, or women training with other women is bad. I think there's definitely a place for that, and they should, but I don't think, sometimes I don't think people understand that training with people your size is not necessarily a good thing. You need to train with different body types as much as possible. And I'm glad that you're a 160-pound guy, but if you don't roll with the 220-pound guys, you're really not street ready. And it's the same thing for a 130-pound woman, that if she doesn't roll with the guys who are bigger guys, then she's not going to really know what she can do against someone of a different size. And I didn't want to gloss over that because I feel that that's really important to really understand the difference between competition jiu-jitsu and street jiu-jitsu. Is that like the game, it's not a game anymore. We're talking about life and death. And I think the perfect example of this is Hoist Gracie UFC 4 against against and he was able to get the triangle, and it took him 15 minutes.
Yeah,
you're like, well, why did it take him so long? Severn didn't know jiu-jitsu. He should have been able to do it. Well, sometimes you got to wait that long.
Yeah. Or Hoist Gracie versus Akibono, right, in Pride.
I mean,
another crazy one, right? But those are, the legend of Pride.
We we'll make people switch up opponents. That's as a coach, that's one thing that sometimes people won't step out of that comfort zone. They get their training partner, those two people, they're always got their corner of the mat, and so they come in and they feel comfortable working together, and it's great for their development of their technique. You understand each other. But when you stick them, you start rotating, okay, find a new partner, and you're doing 4-minute rounds or something like that, because you want to replicate, what you may have to deal with on the street. If your body's not conditioned to have a 285-pound guy trying to blow through your guard when you can't close your guard, and you have to learn that open guard game to be able to sweep, to get up and get away. A lot of what we do is getting up and getting away. I need to survive that initial attack, the initial takedown. They knock me down, and getting up and getting out. And I think, a lot of it is the conditioning I did a private for a guy the other day. And, when you have my 180 pounds versus his 280 pounds, when you get that 100-pound difference, if you're not used to that, the time that you want to experience that for the first time is not on the street, And this is a way that you can prep yourself. You can go to your 6'4", 280-pound guy and say, okay, I want to roll. And, we have the strongest thing that we have in our academy is our people. We have such a great group of blue belts and instructors, assistant instructors, that we stick them with the new people when they come in. They kind of guide them through the class. And then after a couple months, when those people feel comfortable to start rolling, they can go through the whole variety of people. And, Andy, Butch, you remember Andy, Andy's in his 60s, and Andy will get out there and he'll tune up a 20-year-old that comes in. And this guy just absolutely cannot believe that some guy that, is got that much of an age difference can absolutely tie you up in knots and put you to sleep. And so looks can be deceiving just because somebody's smaller. We was running a Saturday class and had two people show up, and a man and a woman said, hey, we'd like to do class. Do you care if we roll? No. Do you need gis? No, we've got our own gis. And they come out, and they were both brown belts. And this lady proceeded to just absolutely mop the mat with the two of us. And we're like, holy cow, she was maybe 115, 120 pounds. Well, her name's Mary Holmes, and she's won Pan Ams at blue, purple, and brown. And she's now a Hoist Gracie black belt. It's just, she got mount, and there was just nothing you could do to get her off. And it was an amazing thing, but it was an amazing thing for the women in our class to see that, hey, this is what you're capable of doing, but you got to put in the time. And she got out and rolled with every guy in there. And had no problem with it. And so, yeah, to your point, Gary, I think it's one of the strongest preparation points that you get out of jiu-jitsu is just the wide variance of people that you can experience training with. And there's so much value in
that. And we obviously been kind of talking about, but what would you say the difference is in your philosophy versus like another jiu-jitsu gym, let's say, versus, because they're close, Marietta Combat Club? And it obviously you guys are friends with them, so I'm not saying it's like you versus them, but there's a difference, right? Those guys are probably kind of what I said earlier. They have some fighters, they got some tough guys. You guys, you trained with Jason Cole before, right? Who I think, right, who owns
Josh Cole, yeah.
Josh, yeah.
And Right. But so two different gyms, essentially, I'm assuming.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm making assumptions. So like, let me know what you guys, first of all, two questions, because that way it's easier for us all to figure out who's saying questions. Kind of complicated for people, right? But two questions, that would be one. What is the difference in philosophy? Then after you're done with that question, tell us a little bit about Pedro Sauer, because you've been with Hoist Gracie, and a lot of people don't know. Like, it's sad people do jiu-jitsu and don't know who Pedro Sauer is, because they know who the current competitors are. They would know who Gordon Ryan is, but maybe they're glossing over a guy that's part of history, right? So
Yeah.
go ahead. Sorry about that.
I think philosophy wise, having trained with Josh started with us. Josh Cole owns Merida Combat Sports. He actually started with us when we ran our affiliate under Hoist, and he was a wrestler in high school. We trained until about 2006, I think, when they sold the building we were
It
in.
was about 2008, I think.
Or 2000.
Yeah,
Okay.
right around in there.
2007, 2008, they sold the building, and we had to shut down, and then life took over. Kids come, we became police officers, scheduled in work. Josh continued to train, and just has flourished, and his academy has grown. We maintain friendships with them. Philosophy wise, there's not really one. They still they gravitate more to the sports side, but they still train all of the self-defense stuff. Josh knows all that stuff in and out. He's a GST instructor, so he's kept that side. And so there's just different avenues that you take your jiu-jitsu. But as far as the self-defense side, his people are no different than us in the application that he has a lot of cops that train up there. He's a police officer himself. So he still stays heavy with that. The difference, I think, is that when we get people that come to us that are interested in, competing at the Fuji tournaments, the Fight to Win Pro, they want to take their jiu-jitsu that direction. We'll send those people to him and to his academy, and vice versa. When he gets the 50-year-old guy that comes in that maybe his body will not maintain the kind of training sessions they run because they go so hard prepping for these competitions, he'll send those people down to us. The same thing with Ronan. When we get people that are interested in boxing, kickboxing, MMA stuff, we send those guys over to Ryan. We tell them, hey, go over there and train with these guys, because that's outside of the realm of what we kind of deal in. We try to stay in our lane. I'd say the average age of our adults is probably early 30s,
Probably
early to mid 30s. It's a lot of the moms and dads of the kids in our program. And, a lot of them are in situations where your body just won't take that competition pace of training that is necessary. And you can get swallowed up in that in a lot of places, because you've got those young, hard charging early 20 guys that they want to get in every session. It's a death match. They're banging because they're getting ready for those comps and stuff like that. And me at 44, my body won't handle that. I'm quickly realizing, and so it's not like it was back in the days of you go in and you spend an hour and you're killing each other one round after another in there. It's a little bit.
And upon that, because that's interesting. Like I think I don't know if people exactly know what that means, right? Like when they say, well, like, what is the difference? Like, how are you calming people down, or what are you saying that, right? Because somebody could still come to your gym, right? That is that, and it doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean you can't handle them or that's not a problem. But what are you telling them to say, hey, this is not that kind of thing or whatever?
Generally, we kind of separate our classes up. Instead of back in the day when it first started, we'd have a 2-hour class, 30 minutes of technique and 45 minutes to an hour and a half of rolling, just sparring like that. And now we do an hour of straight technique and kind of positional drilling and just like fight simulation type stuff. Then we have our open mat afterwards. And basically, open mat afterwards, that's their free game. They can do whatever they want. If they want to roll hard, they can go roll hard. If they want to go in the corner, work on the belt tap stuff, we've got stuff printed out that they can go do that. So the open mat sessions where they can either go hard or, they can go work on their stuff or work on what we were doing that evening.
Yeah. Well, that makes a lot of sense, right? So, and that also helps. I know Marcelo, kind of my coach now, does that same, but it'll be like, you don't have, like nobody's forced to do anything. Like when it's time to open mat, like it's not like, hey, every 5 minutes we're going to switch. And it still may be what the plan is, but they give everybody an opportunity, say, hey, like for those that are wanting to leave, now's the time. If you want to stay, do this. That way it's open, because I think what happens is some people have that mindset, but then they almost feel guilted into staying because someone say, hey, you want to roll? And almost nobody wants to say no because of what we just said is the ego. And even though that's not the best match, like I've told people at my gym, don't roll with this guy, not because that guy's an asshole, but he's rough, right? And they're like, okay, all right, we all agree. And then what happens? That guy comes to the other guy, the rough guy, and says, hey, you want to roll? And they say yes. I'm like, what the? I just told you don't do it. And then they're doing it, but I get it. It's the ego. Like it's the same, like you don't, I have the same problem with gym for me too. Sometimes I go injured, which 2021's been horrible for me. I'm injured every day, right? And then I'm sitting there and somebody says, hey, you want to roll? And it's like, I don't want them to think I'm a pussy, right? Like, so I'm like, sure. And then I'm like, why did I do that? I'm already injured. Now I'm going to like be out another year. But anyway, so that makes a lot of sense. That gives everybody an opportunity. That's kind of what your philosophy is too, right?
Yeah. So we still have the traditional bowing in, bowing out. So we actually do a bow out after the instructional portion. And it kind of signifies, hey, open mat. And we say, hey, if you guys want to stick around, do some training, go roll, work on your belt test, you got extra questions or anything like that. And generally always somebody goes over, clicks on the clock, sets the timer for 4 minutes, 5 minutes or whatever. And you have a group, there's several people go out there and roll and they'll switch between the two. And then you'll have, we have a couple of girls that literally they only work with themselves, but they stick around for open mat. They go and they roll with each other, or they'll work on stuff, or they'll roll and have questions for us of stuff maybe they haven't picked up on yet because they're newer. So
I know sometimes what I'll do too is because those guilt rolls that I see happen, where two guys who probably are dangerous to be against each other, I will mention to one of them that I want them to work on something specific. That way they have it in their head that I need to control in order to get here. So I'll be like, hey, Tim, I need you to go, and today I just want you playing guard. I want you keeping guard, retaining guard. If you get your guard passed, it's all about getting back to your guard, nothing else. And that kind of, it narrows his focus into the control aspect of it. And when you think about it, when I think about safety, what I think about is control, right? If I can, and it's probably why as I get older, I also like D more, is because I have more control. I have handles that I can slow everything down. But if I can control the situation, if I can slow the situation down, it takes the danger away a little bit. And so if I've got two guys who are really spazzy, hey Tim, I don't want you. I know like you want to win, but I see this is the part of your game that needs fixing. And so that's what you need to work on today. And this is a great partner to do that with because he passes guard real well. So if you just concern yourself with trying to hold guard, trying to get back to close guard, you'll find out that it's going to help you against everybody else in here. And it slows it down. It makes, one, it helps him with his guard. Two, it slows it down so that there's less danger. And ultimately, it's safer for everybody because they're not flying across the room and crashing into everybody else.
Yeah, exactly.
And talking about Pedro Sauer, a lot of people don't know who Pedro is. Pedro grew up with Hickson. He was friends with Hickson. He got into jiu-jitsu training there, basically lived with the family. He lived with Helio in Horium's, house or whatever when they came over to the US. He's an 8th degree coral belt now, and there is so much wisdom that you get from this guy. And one of the biggest things that I've picked up, aside from kind of the phenomenal technique, the efficiency of his jiu-jitsu, just watching him move when he's rolling is amazing, but is the longevity, training for longevity, the efficiency of jiu-jitsu, and where, training so I can still be 65 years old on the mat, so I can still be 70 years old on the mat and not being so broken that I can't do anything. Now, those guys, Those guys all have the battle scars and stuff from years of injury, shoulders, knees, those kind of things. But learning the efficient jujitsu and redefining what a win is, when you're rolling. Just like you were talking about there, a win in a match may be simply that I was able to keep this guy in closed guard, for the match. He wasn't able to pass my guard. I don't have to go out and tap somebody out every time. If the guy, for me at 44, I have guys in their, late 20s, early 30s that are 270, 280 pounds. If I roll for 10 minutes with that guy and I survive a 10 minute match on the clock and he doesn't submit me, for me, that feels like a win if that's my goal for the day. Doesn't mean I have to go in and tap this 20-year-old guy, but if I can keep from getting submitted myself, then maybe that's my win for the day. And it takes some of the ego out of it, which ego gets us all hurt in jiu-jitsu. Talking about training when you're injured, you got a tweaked shoulder, come in, hey, you want to roll? Well, you don't want to back out and say, well, no, man, I can't roll today, especially if it's somebody that's fairly new at the gym and they're like, hey, so you roll, and then guess what? Now your shoulder jacked up for another 2 weeks because it was starting to feel pretty good. So I think redefining what the win is, and learning to train for longevity. And I think that's the biggest influence lately for me with our association is you have Master Sauer, who needs, his accolades are what they are. He's trained with Hickson and Helio and all them for his entire time coming up. But we also have, within our association, we have Greg Nelson, who coaches multiple UFC fighters, Ryan Lazarus. We have, Jeff Curran. We have all these people that we have access to that are legit, Gracie Jiu-Jitsu black belts of whatever degree they're at, but they've got the sport realm and stuff like that. Some of them at the highest levels of the sport game. And so within our association, having that variance, it allows for us as coaches to take our students and say, okay, so we're bringing, this guy's coming in for a seminar and he's an old school Gracie Jiu-Jitsu guy, and it's going to be self-defense heavy and stuff like that. Next person come in, maybe working on, David Porter, who's known for his Darce chokes and stuff like that, who trains with Jeff Glover, trains with Ryan Hall, and those guys are always working on new stuff. So we have a real variance within the association and the freedom to explore all kinds of different aspects of jiu-jitsu. So we're really blessed on that. And Pedro, when you train with somebody that's got that much time and that much experience, it's an amazing thing to see 100 people in a room and him do a Q&A session and off the top of his head come up with 5 or 6 different variations of something with no thought. Hey, what's going on? Well, how do I escape side control? That's a big one that you always get and stuff like this. Well, you can do this, and just to watch the absolute artistry of his jiu-jitsu be able to demonstrate. And he'll do it against the little guy, he'll do it against the big guy, and it's an amazing thing to watch.
Those guys, awesome. Go ahead, Gary.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, in talking about how people forget about guys like Pedro Sauer or just don't know about him. Like, he was one of the first guys to have one of those sort of original MMA matches. He had that, wasn't a match against the bodybuilder?
Yeah, Mr. Utah. You'd be surprised how many people at our gym. I had a couple of people come up to me at the gym. They're like, "Hey, I didn't know that was Pedro Sauer." I was like, "Well, yeah." He said, "Well, I YouTubed Pedro Sauer, and that was one of the first videos." Well, that was a long time ago. Yeah. Well, he's been doing it.
It's a bloody fight too, wasn't it?
Oh yeah.
Correctly, yeah.
Oh yeah. It was a good one.
Was he open hand striking him? Do you remember?
Yeah, he was open hand
bled that much?
I think all the blood was from Mr. Utah.
Yeah, all the blood was from
Mr.
Utah.
Yeah. But the way he describes it was all from Mr. Utah. Mr. Utah ended up going to train with him and one of his students. Yeah.
Well, that's actually a nice bow to that story, right? Because listen, for people that haven't seen that, that's an old school jiu-jitsu fight. And that's when, and I was actually thinking about that when you said all these guys had these battle scars, and I was like, well, yeah, in my mind, that's what I said. Yeah, because they're fighting no holds barred, trying to prove that jiu-jitsu worked, right? That was the difference between now and then. Like they've already
That was,
via
it was actually a challenge. It was actually a
Yeah.
challenge match that the guy challenged him, and Pedro told the story. He called Horion and said, hey, this guy, because that's when the Gracie challenge was going around. And so he called Horion's like, hey, this guy's challenging me. And Horion gave him the blessing to do it in Helio to do the fight. And those guys were willing to put it on the line against anybody. But he talked about going to Utah, didn't even speak the language, showed up, and I believe it was Dan Barry's academy, they were doing Jeet Kune Do, I think, and Filipino martial arts, and they brought police officers in, and Pedro said that he rolled with those guys, and they asked him to come back the next night, and he said he got back the next night, and there was like 20 cops in there, and he had to roll. They wanted to, to really prove that he was legit, and he just went through all 20 of them. And you see the videos of Hickson rolling with 20, 30 people in a row. It was pretty intense. And, it wasn't, it was the old school Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, close the distance, get the takedown, the clinch, achieve the dominant position, wear your opponent out, and then submit them. And, it's a philosophy that continues to carry a lot of strength today. I mean, that's what we do.
For those who don't, why don't somebody describe what the Gracie challenge is? Because there's some people, new guys, that don't know, because that's not a thing anymore, right? Because everybody does jiu-jitsu, so it's like it's pointless because you're going to fight somebody that knows. But tell them what the Gracie challenge was, because that's how these guys ended up in a lot of these crazy situations, is people would just show up and challenge them. But go ahead and tell them why, I guess.
Back in the day in Southern California, it was kind of the mecca of a lot of martial arts. You had all of the, a lot of the Jeet Kune Do guys, but you had Long Beach. Those areas were known for the point karate fighting and things like that, kickboxing. So you had a bunch of guys from all these different martial arts styles, and it was always, the bantering back and forth about who was king of the hill. But everybody, I think, in those days kind of stayed in their own lane. The kickboxers fought against the kickboxers. The point karate guys stayed in point karate. Judo guys stayed in judo. You had the ninjutsu. I mean, everybody had their claim to fame, and you pick up a black belt magazine, and you had all the variances in there. Well, then the Gracies come on the scene, and they basically threw the gauntlet down. They'd done it in Brazil, and said, I think it was $100,000 challenge. If you beat us, we'll give you $100,000. Well, that time everybody wanted to test their mettle against them, and there's videos you can go on YouTube and look at the challenge matches. And you walked in, and you were going to get Hoist, you were going to get Hoyler, you were going to get and it eventually Henner and Heron jumped in, and other students and stuff. And everybody came in to test themselves, and I don't think the Gracies ever paid out the $100,000. I mean, it was pretty intense. They would go gentle with them on the first one. The way that I've heard it described, because we've trained with Henner and Heron, trained with Hoist, trained with Pedro, trained with a bunch of them. They would go easy on the first one, and they would submit them. If the guy jumped up, wanted to go again, then they might start getting slapped around a little bit. And if they were dumb enough to ask for a third try, then it was, you might get some elbows dropped on you, might get punched in the face, and then submitted. But it was kind of eye-opening to everyone, and that, hey, there's a new group on the scene, and you either have to learn what they're doing or just avoid them in the first place. Stick in your lane. Which eventually that led to the evolution of MMA. People realized that if you wanted to get into the fight scene, you had to learn some form of grappling and stuff. So
I think too, like a lot of people attribute the UFC as the start of jiu-jitsu in the United States, but really it was those Gracie in action videos, because the guys in Columbus that are Helsing Gracie guys, they were a Taekwondo academy, and here comes this video, this VHS tape that was circulated from in California. They got a hold of it, and they got together, and they were like, I've talked to Robin, up at House Gracie, Ohio in Columbus. And Robin said, you know, we would all watch the video and then watch, you know, whoever it was, whether it be Hickson or Hoist, get a takedown and be like, well, how hard is it to stop a takedown? And he's like, okay, you know, and these are guys that have no grappling experience and they're all Taekwondo guys. Like, you try, I'm gonna try and hit you. You try and grab a hold of me and take me down. They found out without any training that they almost couldn't stop the being grabbed a hold of. And so the training was all distance management, that, you know, they knew when they were safe to get in close to get away. After they realized, like, oh man, somebody's going to grab a hold of me, I got to learn something new. So those Gracie in action videos, all of those were really, in my opinion, that was the start of jiu-jitsu in the US, because it was that changed everybody's mind. Those challenge matches, you know, I remember talking to, it was funny, you were talking about how, like, the first time they would go soft, and then if we have to go again, like, you're starting to not accept, right? And I think that's what it was, like, you're not accepting the fact that what I'm doing is legit, so I have to make it a little more punishable, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then and the one that always comes back about that is Jason Deluca.
That's what I was thinking of when you mentioned that, right? Like saying
Jason, yeah, from my understanding, Jason Deluca came in for that first challenge match in those Gracie in action videos, and he went against Hoist, and I think he got triangled in that one, and he accepted, and he started training with Hoist and Horion and all the guys out in California, and then they started the UFC, and he decided to get into the competition and try and beat Hoist for the money. And I was talking to Helson. We went to dinner with Helson one time, and I've watched all of the old UFCs 100 times. And in the video, in the match, it sounds like you hear somebody from Hoist's corner say, "Don't break, don't break." And so I asked Helson about it, because Helson was training Hoist at that time. I asked Helson about it, and I said, "Were you the one that told him not to break the arm? Did you say no break?" He's like, "No, that was not me. I tell him to break." And the whole thing was they were upset that he came out there to challenge them after he'd already been beaten. Like, we already proved to you that this is the way.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, those are fun, right? I think I had the tapes, and so that's also, like we were talking about, as part of the challenge, right? You got the money, but you also got the VHS tape, right? That you could take, you know, from the big giant camcorders we had in those days.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and that was, so that's why the Mr. Utah video that we mentioned is floating around out there too, is another thing, that because that was part of it, right? Like, you want to, for the Gracies and for Pedro and those guys, they were wanting to promote jiu-jitsu, but if Mr. Utah had won, he wasn't trying to promote bodybuilding. He would want to say, "Look, I'm a badass, I beat this guy," you know, and so he could use that. So that great. I mean, and man, like, too, not to get too far off subject, but I mean, I'm sure, do you guys remember the Yoshi, Anjo, Hickson Gracie?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and
that's researched. That's researched lately. People calling for the video to be released, you know, because there's, I mean, just within the last couple of weeks that it's been brought up, and to Pedro to listen to him talk about, you know, about Hickson and Hickson's jiu-jitsu, and of course, you know, anybody that's trained with him, we're fortunate enough to train with a lot of people that have spent time with him. And the stories are amazing, you know, what the guy has accomplished, and with the you know, the hidden jiu-jitsu stuff and things like that. But, you know, the thing with them is they had so many opportunities, because so many people came out and tested against them, you know, that wanted to take them on. And nowadays, you know, it's if it wasn't for them putting it on the line so many times, none of us would be doing what we're doing today, you know. And they took a lot of risk, and I'm glad they did, because now we have the martial art, the sport, you know, whatever it is that we train. And so we stand on the shoulders of a very, very small group of people that really took on the world when it came to the fighting arts and things like that, and really gave us what we have today. And that's, you know, Pedro and Hickson and Horion and all those guys. it was, you think about such a small group of people coming to this country and what it brought about. I mean, because you're talking, 20 of them, maybe 20 people that really created that explosion. But those 20 people, 20 to 30 maybe, really put a lot of time and a lot of fights and a lot of pain into growing what we have today. So
it is amazing, because I think you're right. It is about 20. I mean, it's the Machados and the Gracies and Sauer and De La Hiva, and like outside of that, there weren't a lot of people teaching anything. Like it especially in the United States, it was mostly the Gracies and Machados, I think, in the earlier. So
yeah, absolutely.
Well, and I don't know why this popped in my head too, but it's funny because I think that's about that times too when they're all training in Horian's garage, right? And and then all of a sudden he's choreographing Lethal Weapon, and we saw the first triangle by Mel Gibson against Gary Busey, who Gary Busey's went crazy, but at the time he was a hell of an actor. Right?
Yes, yeah.
But I always think about it because I remember like we didn't know what a triangle was, and that's like all of a sudden he's choking this guy. Even that was that pre-UFC, like the Lethal Weapon? I mean, it's hard to remember that part, but I
believe it is. Yeah.
I didn't know what triangle was. I just knew he was choking with his legs. I was like, oh, that's odd. I mean,
because he was training those guys that were I think it was the director for the movie. They were training out of his garage. I mean, they didn't even have an academy yet that they were running out of, and so that also helped lead to the explosion and the exposure that they needed. Then you got Ed O'Neill, and some of those guys that got into it, and it just kind of took off from there.
Well, I think Chuck Norris even brought him in.
Yeah,
he had the whole family. There's a video of that floating around. Then I think he went from them to the Machados for his training. So,
Yeah, and it was
actually,
location based. It wasn't easy.
Citizenship.
Yeah, he didn't switch because like the Machados are basically Gracie, right? They're cousins of
Yeah.
Gracie.
Well, I mean,
in there. But yeah, it was like location. That's to this day, more people are with a lot of the Machados, I think, based on location. Like you see Ashton Kutcher and all these people that are famous, and you're like, God, man, they got a lot of people, but it's where they are in comparison to the movie stars, or right? It's which is awesome. All that spreads. I get so mad, like, because I try to post all those articles on social media that, Demi Lovato got a blue better. So, and then it's like people that don't like those people get on like, she's trash. And this, like, like those people are actually spreading jujitsu. Like you may not like her, but lots of girls do, or guys, and because she's bringing attention to it. It's to the positive light. That's why I get mad, like, because they're like, probably gave her a blue belt. I'm like, just drop it. Who cares? We don't know anything about it, right? Like, just know that her and Ashton Kutcher, the same. I think we had a talk about Ashton Kutcher the other day. They're saying, did you see his video rolling with Craig Jones? And look, he looked like he's. I'm like, well, first of all, it's Craig Jones, and Ashton Kutcher actually got to roll with him. That's amazing. Like, because at one time you guys say, oh, he's got a fake brown belt, right? And now he's rolling with Craig Jones, and you're still, slaughtering the guy. And it's like, come on, just those things are good for them. That's all I gotta say. Good for them. I mean, like, you don't need to down everybody that does something because you don't like them, or it's probably the same thing. It's probably jealousy, but they're doing what the Gracies did in a weird way, right? On a national level, the Gracies came, and quite honestly, like, not everybody, like we talked about getting Gracies in action. We bought it because we're guys that like to watch fights, and we knew that there's fights on there, so let's watch it, right? But like our wives and stuff, they weren't thinking the same way. They're not like, I need to see this video. However, they may see Ashton Kutcher, Demi Lovato, or all these people, like, and be like, oh, what is this, right? So I would argue that the Gracies have done it again. They've brought in all these celebrities to kind of push jujitsu. Brilliant people. That may not have been their philosophy because they're wanting to do this again, but brilliant people. I mean, every step of the way, they've kind of hit a home run. Which they're the largest, I'm sure their academies are the largest. They have to be, that are making money.
I think I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I think that kind of brings us to the difference between sport jujitsu and, I don't want to say Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, but like street jiu-jitsu, or just general jiu-jitsu, is that, the guys at Daisy Fresh, like, there's no casual jiu-jitsu guys at Daisy Fresh, right? There's no casual guys at some of these competitions. the thing about the you know, the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, but like having, you know, Henner's wife Eve makes it attractive to women. Like I can be pretty and I can do jiu-jitsu and I can learn to protect myself, and it makes it inviting to people who would otherwise be kind of turned off by what is really kind of a violent sport. You know, there's lots of throws, submissions, chokes, and none of that really sounds too appetizing to the average person. And I think the Gracies definitely made it very attractive to everybody. Like this is for everybody. And you wouldn't, you know, we at my academy, we're a bunch of grunts and we don't have a lot of ladies there. And you know, it's hard to get women to stay in jiu-jitsu when they don't feel it's not that they don't feel welcome, but it's hard for them to find their place there. You know, what are they there to learn? And you know, a place that is teaching self-defense jiu-jitsu, street jiu-jitsu, yeah, I think it's a little more appealing to that.
Yeah, and it seems like a lot of the females that stay for our week-a-day fundamental classes are usually with a partner, whether it be a husband or they have a girlfriend, like a friend that comes with them. So there's kind of they're doing it as a buddy system type thing. We do have a few that are, you know, just single females that really had no connection to the gym beforehand. But for the most part, it seems like the ones we do have are either a wife of somebody that trains, a mother of somebody that trains. You know, they have a connection somehow to it already.
But yeah, amazing stuff here too. Here's what I was thinking while you guys were talking. First of all, I don't want to keep you up all night morning, Jason, since you haven't went to sleep. So I want to think.
Oh, you're good.
So that's good. The other thing I was thinking, random things. I was looking at you two good looking guys and I'm like, hey man, I need one of those shirts at some point. So
We'll hook you up.
the other thing. But I think, I mean, honestly, it's an amazing take. You guys have been through it all, really. Like, you know, all of us have, but so especially you guys, meaning that you guys are law enforcement officers. You've got that take on it. You've been around Hoist Gracie, you know, the original UFC guy. Now you've been around Pedro, and the list goes on and on of the guys that are among the people that started jiu-jitsu and have still been around. You know, people forget that too, is that this, like, we're lucky enough to pretty much meet or know everybody that's ever started this martial art, right? I mean, I've trained with Elio, and I was lucky enough to do that, but that's the guy that's given credit to starting jiu-jitsu, right? Like we can't typically train with the person that started anything like judo or Japanese jiu-jitsu or, you know, anything on and on, taekwondo, and, you know, and then we have access to these amazing people that most people would never have access to, you know. And by access, I mean, you could get on social media and pretty much talk to anybody. You know, it doesn't, you know, some of their accounts are so full. Obviously, I've got so many followers that maybe they're not going to see your stuff, but it's not because, like, if I wrote LeBron James, he's just not going to talk to me, right? But if I write Gordon Ryan, especially if I call Gordon Ryan an asshole, he's probably going to talk to me, right? That's the trick to get him to talk to you, apparently, right? And that's why a lot of people do that, right? Like I mean, we're blessed that we have that, and then also we're all blessed, every one of us, no matter what your gym is into, because there's a place for all of it, that we can spread that jiu-jitsu knowledge to everybody, right? And all of us have different philosophies, like everything else, and that's the beauty of jiu-jitsu. That's actually what I've been teaching this week in a roundabout way, just because I've been listening to a lot of John Danaher podcasts and Ryan Hall and all these people. But so I'm probably stealing some of their words, but that's the part of jiu-jitsu. When we say martial art, the art is what you do, what your take is on the martial art. So the art part is your artistry. How do you put it together? How do you show it? How do you express those things when you go out and do your jiu-jitsu? When you're on the mat, you're painting a picture, and everybody's picture is different, right? And I think that's the beauty of it. And I think when we started all this, when we were talking, I think that's sometimes what's forgotten, is that I think sometimes there's jealousy of both, on both sides of either one, right? And the reason, meaning self-defense versus like sports jiu-jitsu, there are two different camps, right? One's trying to get ready specifically for sport competitions, meaning just like you guys said, the Fujis, the WVGO, of course, our stuff, IBJJF. That is a sport in itself that you got to get ready for, and you're gonna compete in a rule set that's designed for that. So it's different. It's not a fight, right? Like you could potentially take somebody down and get 2 points and then just sit there for 5 minutes and win the match, right? It's a boring match, but you just won. It's a rule set. But the thing, what marries us all together is the beauty of the jiu-jitsu and that we have, and it all comes from the same place. It's just evolved in a certain direction, right? And so what I think is that people shouldn't knock each other. It's when it all kind of comes back to ego, right? Some are jealous if they see somebody else doing good. They're just going, oh, those people suck, or vice versa, right? Or those are a bunch of just fighters and they're idiots. And, I know everybody here on this doesn't do that. We all give each, that's obviously why we're talking. Well, we've always been friends our whole life. That's not exactly why we're talking, but that's what I think people need to get back to, is like, man, give people credit where it's due. And I like when you said, it's really refreshing that you're in Parkersburg, which is next to Marietta, which is next to Josh's gym, not too far from his gym. You're next to Ryan Carroll's gym. You're next to Mike Shepard's in there somewhere, and there's probably other people, right? But you found a way to work with everybody, give everybody props. And it's not a hunger mentality where in order to get the student, you're not putting other people down, right? And I don't do the same. Like, people come all the time and they'll be like, hey, this gym is talking trash about you. And I say, listen, man, that's fine. Everybody should think they're number one. If not, they wouldn't have a gym. Like, I'm fine with that, saying that they're better than I am, right? I probably think the same, but there's a way to phrase that and put that. And it's all like, we should prop each other up more or less, right? People have an like, why are we fighting over the people? That's their choice to go wherever. We're not gangs. This is not warriors.
Turf wars.
Yeah, it's different, right? So, and that's the thing of jiu-jitsu. In order to give back truly to jiu-jitsu, which we all love, it should be, hey man, train where you want. You're always welcome here. We love those people. We love you. We love that you're training jiu-jitsu, and hopefully be part of your journey at some point. You should be able to cross train too. Like, if not, that's weird, right?
When we had COVID, shutdowns, West Virginia was still open where we could train our gym. Ohio was completely shut down. So we gave Josh Cole, Merit Combat Sports, the key to our gym, and our nights we were off, he was running classes out of our gym. We told him, said, hey, you can use our facility so you can keep your program going. Ronan and Ryan, those guys, they come over to our gym and roll. We invite them all the time. Josh Cole comes down. Sometimes he'll teach classes at our place. His black belts will come down and stuff like that. We are working to propel and to promote jiu-jitsu to the community, because the more people we have training, the more mentally healthy they're going to be, the more physically healthy they're going to be. And it puts more people out there on the street that are competently able to defend themselves. I don't care if they train at our facility. I don't care if they train at Ronan. I don't care if they train at Marietta, as long as they're training, because they're going to be a better person. I think jiu-jitsu makes you a better person, physically, mentally, on some people would say spiritually. It puts you more in tune with yourself, and you can't lie. It exposes everything. It exposes your weakness. If you have too much of an ego, it'll expose it. It'll humble you, and stuff like that. So, our philosophy is that there's a different variations, different philosophies in jiu-jitsu. But we know that in our area, there's 3 places that people can train that whatever style they want to do, whether it's MMA, whether it's combat jiu-jitsu, whether it's boxing, kickboxing, whether it's sport jiu-jitsu, there's something for everybody. And our job, we feel, is to direct that person to the place that the fit is for them, and what they're looking for. And if it's not at our place, well, hey, go try this guy out, or go try this guy out, because we're concerned to train. Our academy's exploded, and we're extremely blessed to have the people we have, but we go after the 99%. We go after those people. And if you listen to, we've trained a lot with Henner and Huron, and the Gracies have a system that works, and so, the same thing with our association with Pedro. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel on how to grow an academy. We have examples and friends that we've developed that we can follow, that we don't need to try and reinvent the wheel. We want to create an environment where if you want to do, first and foremost, you're going to learn self-defense jiu-jitsu. You're going to get that. if you want to branch off and compete, we have people that do that. We have classes that those guys train just for that stuff. But if your goal is to get onto a Fight to Win pro card, we're going to send you to the guys that are going to prep you for that, because that's what they do, you know. And our people go up and train at these other academies, and we don't care, you know, because they come back and they bring things back that makes our whole academy better. You know, they go up and do seminars with Gracie, go do seminars with all these other guys. That's awesome. You know, we're not stuck in just, you got to just train with our association, just train with us. Go get the knowledge, grow your game, develop your flavor of jiu-jitsu, bring it back and share it, you know, and that just makes everybody better.
Well, it's all, I mean, Gary, do you have, I mean, that's actually a beautiful way to end this if you guys want to end this, but I mean, it's beautiful, Mike.
Yeah. Nah, there's nothing to add to that. Nothing to add to that. That was gorgeous.
Yeah. Well, let's end on that. That's a high note. And then
before you end, Butch, we just, you know, I mentioned that before we were starting there that this is 20 years since I first walked into Advanced BKJ down in Charleston. It was 2001, prior to September 11. Throughout the time that Parkersburg had jiu-jitsu, because we had, me and Jeremy Bradley came back and we had the first Brazilian jiu-jitsu in Parkersburg. And throughout that, you have been a mentor to us throughout all that. You came down, brought your guys down, did training sessions with us and stuff. Always been a great friend, a great supporter of us. And, you know, whether it's you're in town and we're grabbing lunch or something like that over the years, just want to really say thank you for all your mentorship and friendship and guidance over the years, and providing, you know, Advanced BKJ for us guys that got down there and wanted to come in and on the third floor of a building in Charleston, and with no air conditioning and one fan, and sweat to death, and all those training sessions, man. If it wasn't for you stepping out there years ago and doing that, you know, we wouldn't be where we're at today. So I want to tell you thank you for that, and for all of your friendship and mentorship over the years. So it means a lot.
Well, I appreciate it. It's awesome that we have a 2-decade relationship, all of us, right? It's
Yeah.
like a lot of people can't say that, especially when it comes to training. It's a difficult thing, but I think we've all lived by the same philosophy, that exactly what you said, and we said that was so beautiful, is that we truly live by those words, is that jiu-jitsu is for everybody. We're out there doing, or, you know, putting our money where our mouth is, so to speak, meaning is that's how we live, that's how we're doing it. And there's no fakeness between any of you guys that are on this podcast, and that's refreshing, right? So props to you guys for being amazing, for keeping the dream alive in Parkersburg when there was nothing, and now there's multiple gyms. So you guys are pioneers as well, and continue to be. Now people can look at you as how do I have a successful gym and grow my gym? I mean, even that is something that you guys should marvel over, because now you're going to be able to lead the way where people can see, well, this is maybe how I should do things, or maybe I should re-examine some things, and again, not be closed-minded, not just say, well, they do this and I do this. It doesn't matter. Like, if there's something that you think's awesome, acknowledge it and try to go out and learn it and do it. So thank you for doing that and doing all the things you guys do. So let's finish with telling everybody how they can find you guys on social media, how they can find your gym, where it's at, and all those things. And by doing that, by the way, you're going to meet some awesome law enforcement guys that are also teaching and actually making the world a better place there. Instead of just writing on the internet, everybody should do this, they should do that, and judging people and telling everybody what to do without actually doing anything in return. You guys are out there doing it and making the world a better place. So anyway, so tell us where they can find you. And let's
so Parkersburg BJJ.com website, Parkersburg BJJ for Facebook and Instagram. Those are the 3 main ways to get a hold of us.
What's your address of your gym? Is it close to anything?
So our address is 101 12th Street, Vienna, West Virginia.
Okay.
But if you use GPS, that won't find us. So you got to use 0 and Street, which is the street right beside us.
Okay.
And that'll put you right to us. We should show up on Google Maps if you're looking for us. And if anybody's familiar with Vienna, we're right behind Cheddar's, the restaurant Cheddar's, just down there with the railroad tracks on the river. So we got a nice view of the river there, and it makes it nice. And we got some seminars coming up. We got a seminar with Kristen DeBrooker. She was one of the head trainers with Master Sauer at his main academy in Herndon, Virginia for 12 years.
Yeah.
Somewhere around in there. It's like 11, 12 years. She's amazing.
MMA fighter. She's a Muay Thai instructor, Filipino martial arts instructor, I believe, under Dan and Santos Association. And she's one of Pedro's female black belts. She's amazing instructor, absolutely amazing instructor. She'll be here the 24th of this month. And so if anybody's interested, especially for any of the ladies that are training, she's quite a competitor. She now is part owner and head instructor of it's Gracie Charlottesville.
Yes.
And in Charlottesville, Virginia.
Well, that's awesome. Hopefully I can send some ladies there. We got some ladies that train that probably would love to go. So I'll make sure to hype it up for them. So that's awesome. Gary, why don't you bring us home, since I hogged this up, since Mike and Jason are my friends, but go ahead.
Mike, Jason, thanks for joining us. Can't say enough about you guys. And also thanks for coming to Nelsonville. I had some guys competing up there, and it's really, like Butch said, and you guys have said, it's really about sharing jiu-jitsu, spreading jiu-jitsu. Rising tide raises all ships, and hopefully we can all do this together. All kinds of love for you guys, and thank you much.
Thank you guys.
You guys.
Appreciate it. Gary, good luck on in your future too, on your move and stuff like that. Wish you the best of luck on everything, and look forward to when you come back for a visit, man. We'll have to hook up.
I have way too many people up here to not annoy.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll be back constantly. All kinds of love, guys. Take care.
All right,
Jason, get some sleep.
Take care, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. All right. See you guys.
See you, Butch. Thanks, man.